stars, but I'm gonna make it stars for Jesus.
You want them to be the Jackson 5?
No, they better than the Jackson 5. You gonna sing for the Lord, you gonna lay down for the devil. You didn't just sell your songs, you sold your future. You sold your sister's future. All we ever did was what you wanted us to do. Did you ever ask us what we wanted?
Right, ladies, it's showtime.
She's not gonna stay in this house like you like that. You brought the sunshine in my life. She's gotta be ready. You gotta be perfect.
Our album is number 20 on the chart.
You've been nominated for Best Soul Gospel Performance. These are Clark Sisters. Grammy nominations and #1 album. You came on.
That's how it's done.
Hi, I'm Clarence Waldron. Welcome back to Black Muse. But before we get started with tonight's special guest, I really want to give a special thank you and acknowledgement, if you will, out to Howard Sandifer and his wife, Darlene. They are the founders of the Chicago West Community Music Center on the west side of Chicago. And this whole video podcast was their idea. They said, why not have lively conversations with celebs and newsmakers? So, in keeping with that, tonight promises to be a lively conversation. Our special guest is Miss Sylvia L. Jones, a former broadcast journalist and now a successful, widely successful screenwriter. Oh, her credits are very impressive. The biggest one for me, the feature film, The Clark Sisters, the first ladies of gospel. Oh my God. But unlike other people, she does not rest on her laurels. Even right now, she is writing for the Power spinoff called Force. And that features the guy whose name is Tommy. There's something with Tommy, but she'll tell you about that as well. But also, keeping it moving, she has a NBC gig that she's working on now. She's writing and producing for the Endgame on NBC on Monday nights. So without further ado, y'all, get your popcorn. We're going to Hollywood, y'all, with Sylvia Jones.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad to be here. I'm listening to that intro and I'm going, wow, who is he talking about? Wow, that's something else.
So, but now you were a broadcast journalist, before. How did you switch to TV and film writing?
A lot of prayer, a lot of faith, and a whole lot of craziness. I'm gonna be honest, I was not as prepared as I probably should have been. But it was one of those things I always had deep in my belly that I wanted to be a TV writer. And that was as far as the dream went, that I wanted to be in a writer's room. I wanted to see if I could, write TV. That's something that I've wanted to do for as long as I can remember. Even in college, but I didn't have a roadmap for it. I didn't have anybody to say, here are the steps, here's what you do. So I thought, fool that I was as a college student, I thought that going into broadcast journalism was the safe route. I thought I could do that. And it turns out I did it. I was successful. I had a great career, but boy, did I have no idea that there is absolutely nothing safe about a career in broadcast journalism. But I got to a point where I was 20 plus years in. I jokingly say that I had a midlife crisis, but honestly, it's not that much of a joke. I got to a point where I really needed to press the reset button. And I started asking myself, if there's anything I could do, if money were not an object, if fear were not a factor, what would I do? And I went back to that old college dream of, I wonder if I could make it in Hollywood. Now, I was scared to do it at 20 something with, nothing on the line. Now cut to I'm 40 something with everything on the line. And I was like, you only live once. If not now, then when? And so I still didn't have the courage to just say, I'm gonna just move to LA with $200 and a dream. So I started quietly looking around for a program, like, because I'm an academic, like I feel like, teach me how to do this. So I found this program at UCLA that was, I call it an MFA Light because it's a 10-month boot camp screenwriting program. And I told myself, if I get accepted to this job, to this program, I'm going to blow up my life. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to leave my house. I'm going to leave all of it. And I'm going to LA, you know? And I didn't tell people, I didn't tell anybody. I was just like, this is just between me and God. This is going to be my little thing. I got my acceptance letter literally like 2 weeks before it was time for class to start. And I had to decide if I was going to, you know, let my money match my mouth, you know? And so I was like, why not? The worst that could happen is that I could fail. And, you know, I failed before, you know, I'll fail again. So I decided to do it. I quit my job. I told my family, told my friends. So many people thought I was having a mental break, you know, thought they needed to maybe step in and have a little intervention for me because, you know, what in the world am I doing leaving this good job at ABC7 Chicago to go to LA, Hollywood? You know, that's not for you. And I said, well, I'm going to try it anyway. So I went, I joined the program and the program was great, but there was no job, no job. It wasn't like a fellowship or an internship or something. So I still don't have a roadmap. So I started knocking on doors, networking, I started producing my career. Everything that I had learned how to do in journalism, to get in front of the right people and do the right things, make the right connections, I did, until finally I got what many people laughed at me when they heard and thought was just, you know, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world, but I got a job as a production assistant on the show Criminal Minds Beyond Borders on CBS. And for people who don't know the industry, there's intern and then there's production assistant. Like that, I mean, you can't go any further down the bottom than a production. Like that's the entry level position. And not only was I production assistant, I wasn't even anywhere near the writer's room. I was in the props department, you know? And so people were like, you got that? But you've been and I'm like, I was so excited. I'm like, oh my God, you know, I'm here. I'm on my first set, you know, I'm in TV, y'all, you know, I'm feeling like I'm on my way. And it didn't bother me starting at the bottom. You know, humility has never been an issue for me. You know, I'm like, I may be at the top of the heap over there, but I'm starting off over here. And I know what I can do. So I know I won't be at the bottom long. That much I knew. So I got in that job and it just snowballed, one thing after the other. Things just started lining up. And before I knew it, I was here. So that's how I made the transition.
So how did you get the opportunity to write the Clark Sisters film? How did that come about?
Okay, well,
just jump into it.
That was also, I'm telling you, it was just kismet, God ordering my steps, you name it. So I told you I got that job on as the PA in the props department on Criminal Minds Beyond Borders. So as that job was nearing its end, you know, I started hearing this 4-letter word that was not a part of my vocabulary, rap. And I'm like, rap, wait, what is going on here? And it's like, oh, well, the season is about to wrap and everybody is about to go their separate ways. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do now? News, I've been working in news all this time. News doesn't wrap. It just keeps going. We don't wait for a season renewal and a pickup and what, you know, is it going to be in the trades? No, what am I, you know, do you know how hard it was for me to get this one job? What am I supposed to do? And so people told me, why don't you just hang around the other production assistants? They'll be able to tell you where the next production assistant job is. And I thought, well, that's a great idea if I want to be a production assistant again, but I never want to be that again in my life. I want to be a writer. That's what I came out here to do. So I thought logically, if hanging around the production assistants would help me find a production assistant job, if I hang around writers, that might help me get a writer job. So I asked for a meeting with the head writer, the showrunner. He granted me one. Turns out the next show that he was going to work on was The Chi. And when he told me about it, I'm like, The Chi is in Chicago? He's like, yeah, it's this gritty urban drama set on the south side of Chicago, and we've got a bunch of LA writers. We need, people who know Chicago. I'm like, oh, I'm in. So I thought that was going to be my big break, and I was going to get a job as a writer. They were like, no, but you can be the writer's assistant. I'm like, count me in. I'm so excited. I will assist my behind off. I will do whatever it is that I need to do. At least now I'm in the writer's room. So fast forward, I'm in the writer's room for that show as an assistant. And by the time the writer's room was breaking up and the bosses were moving to Chicago to shoot, they asked me if I wanted to come along. And so I'm thinking, wait a minute, let me get this straight. I left Chicago to get a career in Hollywood, only for my Chicago knowledge to get me a job on a show called The Chi. And you're going to ask me if I want to come back to Chicago to work on set. That's a solid yes. I'm right back here. And so in the course of that time, I ended up working as writer on set for like 3 or 4 episodes, which was a big honor, a big deal. One of the directors who I worked with for one of the episodes had no idea that I was a newbie. She's like, you're one of the best writers I've worked with, bar none, period. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'll take that, Fast forward to I'm on another show and I get a call out of the blue from a producer saying, hey, we're working on this project. She said, first, have you ever heard of the Clark sisters? And I'm like, wait a minute, wait, slow down. You just asked me if I ever heard of the Clark sisters? Wait, that's blasphemy in my house, And so we talked and she said, well, we have a green light to do a biopic on the Clark sisters. We've had several scripts and we, Lifetime really wants to do the movie, but just haven't found a script that they really like. And your name came up. What turns out one of the directors that I had worked with on The Chi recommended me because this producer had been calling around trying to see if anybody had recommendations for a writer who might be good for this particular project. And she mentioned my name. And so she said, I just wanted to check with you, see if you were interested, if you'd want to, pitch on the movie. You'd have to first pitch it to me. If I like it, then we'd send you to the studio execs at Lifetime. You'd have to pitch it to them. Then it would ultimately be their decision as to whether or not you get the job, if you can write the movie, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, yes, yes, and more yes. Meanwhile, I'm Googling how to pitch a movie, because I'm like, because I had never, this is not in my wheelhouse, but I certainly was not about to let the opportunity pass. And so I went through all the steps, pitched all of the execs. They loved it. The highest compliment I have gotten to date is when I turned in my first draft of the movie. The exec at Lifetime said, oh my goodness, now we actually have a script that we can make. And I was just like, oh my God, this is fantastic. And so, a whole lot of hoops to jump through from there, but I didn't even realize how big of a deal it was at the time to not only be asked to write a movie, but to write a movie that actually gets made and gets on the air anywhere. So many writers never get that opportunity in their whole careers. And for me to have had that happen within the first, 2 years? Yeah, within the first 2 years that I was in LA, incredible. Like, wow. There's no other word, just incredible.
Wow. So now, is there a favorite scene from the movie that you enjoy looking at and said, that's some great writing there? Yes,
It's funny. I don't know. Do I have a favorite scene? I don't know. I have favorite lines, and I think probably my favorite line is when Maddie says, "Are you going to sing for the Lord or lay down for the devil?" I think that's probably my favorite line. Maybe my favorite scene is the scene when Twinkie and her mom have the altercation on the stairs, because it's such a hard scene. It's such a hard scene, and that was the moment that, first of all, a lot of people didn't know about it. That's probably one of the scenes that the most people came back and asked me, did that really happen, or was that creative license? And it was something that happened. And in my mind, that was the moment that broke Maddie's heart. And Dr. Maddie Moss. We're not on first name basis. Don't get me wrong, but that was the moment that broke her heart, and it broke my heart. You know what I mean? And so I think, I don't know if favorite is the right word, because you want something that's, uplifting, but for me, that was probably the most emotional scene, just diving into that, knowing that Dr. Clark had so much writing, and that was probably the point that that was a real turning point for Dr. Clark. So and for Miss Twinkie. So yeah, that scene probably always gets me a little bit.
Cool. Now, the film resonates with Black women. What do you hope people will get from seeing it now? It's on Prime, Amazon, and on DVD,
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. I feel like I should, at this point, I should have like a set answer for what I want people to get, and I don't have one. And I think because when I wrote the movie, so much of it resonated with me. There are parts of me and parts of my family and people that I know in that movie. I am a person who firmly believes that the one heart reaches another heart. And so I feel like when I was writing, I was putting so much of my heart in it, and where it met other people was at different, people, wherever their heart was. I mean, I remember when it first aired, and I started getting calls immediately from friends and family and so forth. And I mean, first I was just excited that they liked it, but I was blown away by some of the things that they were saying to me that resonated with them, that I'd be lying if I said, oh, this was my intention. It just speaks to where you are. Like, one of the comments that I got that still stands out, one of the oldest friends called me afterwards, and she said, Sylvia, I just had to tell you, she has 2 daughters, college age. She said, we just spent like an hour talking after watching this movie together. She said, this changes the way I'm going to parent from here on out. Wow. What? A movie? A movie is going to change the way you parent? Like, and I didn't even go through well, how were you parenting before? And what I didn't, yeah. But apparently there were things in that movie that, had her daughter say things to her, maybe, and she's, but it struck a chord. And, she saw some things in herself. I don't know, positive, negative, or whatever, but the fact that it could get mothers, and that was something I heard a lot, that people were telling me they watched it with their mothers, or they went and watched it again with their mothers, or that kind of thing. It was very much a mother-daughter, and I think remains a mother-daughter kind of bonding things. And I think just the fact that if it gets people talking, if it gets people thinking, I've done my job. That's what I want people to get. I don't want to force anything on anybody. I've had people ask me, well, it's a faith movie. So and I was like, actually, when I wrote it, I was not thinking about it as a faith movie. I think of it as a family drama. about women who happen to be women of faith. It was not, I never wrote a word with the idea of I was crusading or trying to convince anybody to do anything. I do think that you must be dead inside if you listen to that music and you don't feel something stirring up on the inside of you. You gotta be, you need to check yourself if you don't feel something. But you know, it was like, for me, this is a family drama that happens to be cloaked around gospel music and faith and so forth. And if that thing reaches out and snatches you, then, oh my God, that's on you, you know, great. But that was not necessarily the intention. I was writing from my heart, and there are a lot of other hands that also went into it. I cannot for a second say, oh, this was a Sylvia effort and Sylvia alone. There are a lot of other hands, a lot of other people, you know, with notes, with writing, with all kinds of things, everybody serving up their A game, trying to make this a movie that would really, really touch people's spirit. And for me, that's as much as I want. I wanted to touch people's spirit wherever they are.
Yeah, well, you did that. You did that. You did that. So now let's talk about you. You're from Chicago. Where'd you grow up, and what schools did you attend, and all of that?
I am from Chicago. We moved around. We were always on the South Side. Moved around a few times, but I think I probably identify home most as the Auburn Gresham neighborhood. That's where I spent the most time. I went to high school on the West Side at Providence St. Mel. Providence St. Mel. If I tried to let Providence St. Mel go, it wouldn't let me go. So.
No way.
So I am forever its own, and it will always be mine. I went to Hearst for grammar school over on 46 and Lamont. So I've been kind of all over, but yeah, that's why I said I'm born and raised South Side, but the West Side always claims me. So, and I claim it.
Cool. Now, did you grow up in church?
Oh God, yes.
Tell me about that. Yes.
I think that was not to harp on the Clark sisters, but aside from just being a fan, when that project came upon me, so much of just their story resonated with me just in terms of demographics. I mean, having a strong mother who was steeped in faith, bound in the church, you know, stalwart, determined to make sure her daughter, and I'm one of 4 daughters, making sure that we were, you know, that we were in church, that we had the gospel, that we, you know, went a certain way and didn't stray. All of that made sense to me. You know, when I, you know, saw Dr. I mean, aside from having the phenomenal voices and becoming world-class singers around the world, I mean, they're just like us, you know, just so much of that resonated with me, because that was, you know, in many ways, my mother was a lot like Dr. Clark, and just, you know, it's you're going to be at Sunday school, you're going to be at church, you're going to be at choir rehearsal, you're going to be at revival, you don't have time to get in trouble and do any of those other kinds of things, because this is the way to go. And I'm so glad she did. You know, I'm so glad she did.
Yeah.
I don't know where I would be if she didn't.
Yeah. Now, what church were you associated with?
A little small church in K-Town, Kevel New Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church is where I got my legs.
Okay, cool. I love your inspirational quotes, and there's one that really stays with me. Living like he loves me. Living like he loves me. What does that mean? I have an idea, but what does that mean?
You know, it can mean so many things. And I think even when I revisit it, it depends on where I am in my life. But for the most part, it means living with high expectation. You know, knowing that I am adopted into a royal family, knowing that if God is for me, nobody can be against me. So why should I settle for less? Why should I not expect the best to come to me? Why should I let crumbs be all that I can get? I'm the king's daughter. He loves me. You know, I mean, I'm not the, you know, the person that's, you know, the cast out. I'm his daughter. I'm the princess. So why should I not expect that he's going to protect me, that he's going to make sure that the best things are available to me, that I'm not cared for, that I'm not secure, that I'm not loved, all of those kinds of things. And when you know that, in your head, in your heart, in your spirit, you walk a little taller, you smile a little bigger, you feel, a joy down on the inside that nobody else can take away, because you have something that nobody else gave you. It's a privilege. It's walking in privilege. And that's not about how much money you have in your pocket. That's about knowing who you belong to and who's ordering your steps. And so to me, when I say I'm living like he loves me, it's better than living my best life, because trust me, I live my best life. I'm trying to tell you, I live my best life. And part of it is because I know who's on my side. I know that God loves me. If you might not like me, but God loves me. And that's all that really matters at the end of the day.
Now, who inspired you? Would that be just your mother, or were there any teachers along the way?
Oh my goodness. Yes, there are so many people who inspired me. I'm almost afraid to start listing, because somebody's going to call me and say, Sylvia, I didn't hear my name. There are so many people, but I mean, first and foremost would have to be my late mother, who, was just always my biggest cheerleader, the person who told me I could do it, even if she didn't know how to tell me how I could get there, or didn't know what to get me there. She always had the faith and the confidence that I could. I would definitely have to say Paul Adams, who is executive chairman of Providence St. Mel, who was principal back in the 80s when I was there. Back in the olden days, he told me that I could. It sounds so simple, but it just, when other people are telling you that you can, and they mean it, even if you don't see it, even if you have no idea how, you don't have a map, you don't know what step is supposed to come next. When you have a chorus of people who believe in you, even when you don't believe in yourself, and who can say, you can do it, and I'm proud of you. Oh my God, it's like, I can't not try. I think of another woman, her name, late Maddie Hunt. She was a woman who was in my church. She directed the little kids choir back when I was a little kid, and watched me grow up. And she was not a woman of means at all. I mean, she was definitely not a woman of means. But I remember when I got accepted to college, and this is not a brag moment. This is a moment for point. I'm coming from the West Side, and I got accepted to Stanford University. And most of the people in my sphere didn't even have an idea of the scope of what that meant. And this woman, I don't know, to this day, I don't know how she did it. I don't know where she got it from, but she scraped up $500 to give me to go to school. Now, you might, you with your big ball in that Northwestern might say $500. Well, that's not. $500 may have well have been $5 million to me and to her. It was such a sacrifice for her to give me $500 to go to school. And it meant so much, because even then, and even more now as an adult, I get it, but even then I understood, this is seed money. She's planting a seed. She's making an investment. And even though I gave her $500 back years later, after and with interest, after I grew up and was successful and so forth, but this was a person who was making a sacrifice, and she had children of her own and bills and all, and was ill and had all kinds of other things. I know this was a big sacrifice.
Right.
She gave this to me because I'm thinking, she's making an investment.
Yeah.
And anybody who makes an investment is expecting a return. And I knew the only return she wanted was to see me be successful. That was the return she was expecting. And she was putting all that she had on that. Like, I'm waiting for my return. How could I not be successful? How could I not work my behind off?
Yeah. Yeah.
How could I not?
Mm.
She has to be able to see that she didn't make a foolish investment. She has to be able to see that that was the right choice. She could have bought some McDonald's stock.
Right. Right.
Instead,
Exactly.
she chose to invest in me.
In you. In
Yes,
you.
in me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
matters.
Yes. Yes.
That's the kind of person who inspires me. You know, I talk about Paul Adams. Anybody who knows him knows that this is a man that you know, they say walk softly and carry a big stick. He doesn't walk softly. He walks hard, and he carries a big, like he does not take wooden nickels. He does not, you know, but for him, it's all about education. It's all this is a person who has put everything on the line. He has put his whole life down to make sure that kids are successful. Black kids on the west side of Chicago are successful, of which I am one of them. He invested in me.
Right.
And the only return he's ever wanted was to see me do well. How could I not?
How could you not? How could you not?
How could I not?
Oh. Mm.
No, how could I not? You know, I can't even list all of the things that my mother did, but I'll just say this one thing to go back to the Providence St. Mel. Back in the day, we would get so much homework, like hours and hours and hours worth of homework. And I would be up till 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning doing homework. And my mother, bless her soul, my education always exceeded hers. And so I don't ever remember a time that she, you know, like other parents could, you know, sit down and help you with homework or whatever, but she would never go to bed until I went to bed. So the whole house would be quiet. I'd be at the kitchen table doing mountains and mountains of homework, and she'd be up making me tea and making sandwiches and asking, "You almost done yet?" And I know she had to get up and go to work in the morning, but that was what she could do for support. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm with you, I support you. So none of those things I take lightly. I understand that these people, I have to give them a return on their investment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Now go up to Medill. How did your degree from Medill help you?
Oh my goodness, so much. Well, first of all, I don't regret a second of my career as a journalist. I mean, I spent 22 years working as a journalist and did very well. I mean, at the point that I decided to quit, I was traveling the East Coast covering the primaries between Hillary Clinton and Trump. So I was not on a downside. I mean, so all of those skills, they all worked for me. But I'll say this, and you know, since we've talked so much about the Clark sisters, probably, especially since I was so new and so green when I got that opportunity, I would say my journalism skills actually helped me more than my TV writing skills at that point. Because in doing the research, part of it was I got to interview the sisters. And in interviewing the sisters, that was how I pulled out the story and how I got so many of those little tidbits that a lot of people didn't know. I mean, and you talk about the Clark sisters, there are fans and then there are super fans. I mean, there are people who you can't tell them anything. They think they know the Clark sisters better than Clark sisters know themselves.
Exactly.
So when, you know, you try to put some new information in there, you know, they're fact checking you. They're trying to see if this is really right. But my interviewing skills allowed me to pull out little details, little moments that, and sometimes they had long forgotten, you know, that I was able to put in the movie that were actually, you know, true things that happened, or, you know, or just knowing how to interview them separately and ask some of them about the same events, and recognizing that two people can be in exactly the same place and exactly the same time and have very different perspectives about what happened. And I chose moments that I interviewed them accordingly in that way, so that when I made the move, when I tried to put together the script, I'd be able to put in a number of those different perspectives. So it never felt like a monolith when you were talking about the sisters. That was important to me, that each of these women had their own distinct personality, that it wasn't just mom and sisters, but that you saw the relationship between mom and each sister individually, that you saw relationships between the sisters themselves, that kind of thing. So a lot of that came from, and then just doing the research to try to get it right on as much as I possibly could. So much of that came from Medill, from the fundamentals of journalism, that I learned all the way back then and carried through a 2 decades long career.
I know you get this all the time. Any advice to people who want to do what you were doing, who want to be a screenwriter?
Well, first I'll say, if you want to be a screenwriter, write. I mean, write some more. The first thing you write will probably be terrible. The next thing you write will probably be a little less terrible. Eventually, you will write something and it will be, good, then better, then great, then, all those kinds of things. So keep doing it. If you say you're a writer, then write. The other portion of that, though, is, people don't see a candle under, hidden under a bucket or whatever. You have to let your light shine. You have to be out there. You have to, I hate using the word network because it sounds so cliche, and people are like, oh, network. They think it means going to a party and handing out cards, which it really doesn't. It's about building relationships, especially when you're talking about Hollywood and trying to write professionally, and I say write professionally because anybody can write. It's a very different thing to write and be paid to write. That's the difference between being a professional writer and just being a writer. And if you want to be paid, then it's beyond just, am I a good writer and are people going to find me or whatever? It's also about building relationships. I actually told someone just recently I was telling her this, and she was not really interested in hearing what I said. And she snapped me off by saying, well, eventually, the right person will just find me, and, they'll see that my writing is good. I was like, well, I can't say that that's not true. Absolutely, that could happen. But it's making those connections is the difference between, if you've got the next great American script, will the right person open your email when they see your name? Will what's that old saying? Your name will be mentioned in rooms your feet will never cross, your feet will never touch, or something like that. I'm sure I just botched up that thing, but but you know what I mean? Yeah, so many of just like I was saying, the Clark sisters, so many opportunities that I have gotten have come from word of mouth, have come from phone calls that I've gotten from people who I had no idea that I was even on their radar. But they said, oh, so-and-so who you worked with on such and such a project said that I should call you and you might be good for this. That kind of thing happens. And that comes from making connections, being a good person, being someone that people want to work with and want to be around, showing that you have integrity, all those kinds of things. And I get it. Most writers are introverts. We want to just kind of be, into ourselves and write our scripts and mind our business and keep our noses clean and our heads down. And I get it, because I'm exactly that person. But I understand that nobody's going to see what I'm doing if I keep it all to myself. I have to have the courage to put it out there. So I could go on and give lots and lots and lots more advice, but I'll leave it there. Keep writing and have the courage to get out there and make connections so that people will see it.
Cool. Winding down here, this is Women's History Month. How should we celebrate Women's History Month?
My answer to almost everything is education. And
Hmm.
so when I say, when I think about women's history and celebrating women's history, I say first educate yourself. So many of the contributions that women have made, are making, etc. Secondly, I say educate yourself to pay homage to those women, because so many of the women, whether they are like the women who I described, who are my personal muses, who may not have gone as far in education as maybe I have, but they pushed me to do so. It's a way of honoring them. And so I said, especially to young people all the time, educate yourself, get all that there is out there available to you. The more you know, the more you grow. And I don't think there's a woman alive who will not be happy and proud to see you soar. So for me, the best way to celebrate women is to, first educate yourself and know who they are. Secondly, educate yourself for the purpose of being educated, to make them feel proud. That's how I do it.
All right, last question. What's next for you? Anything coming up that you can share with us right now, or?
Well, unfortunately, not much that I can share. I have a number of things brewing, and I'm waiting to see kind of what boils to the surface first. I'm excited about a number of different projects, and it's just a matter of seeing what topples over. I will say one of the projects, and I'm very, very excited about, will bring the band back together. Some of the people who were some of the players from the Clark Sisters movie are kind of banding together, and we've got a little something that if we can get a green light on it, we think that the people in folk might enjoy, because we like it. So it's got a long way to go before we get to where we need to get, but I'm particularly excited about that one, so stay tuned.
Well, I really enjoyed meeting you and talking to you. Anything else that you want to share with us at all?
It has been an honor and a privilege to be a part of Black Muse. I'm thrilled and humbled that you all would put me in the company of such other great women as part of your women's history lineup. I'm grateful. I say thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.